И снова здравствуйте, мои уважаемые зрители.
Hello again, my dear viewers. In the yard we have April 10th, and the traditional review of events at the front. What happened today, and, accordingly, what can be expected in the near future. Let's start, traditionally, to consider the situation from the north. These are, conditionally, the Bryansk, Kursk, Oryol, Belgorod directions. Today, the top news here was an announcement in the Kursk region, a yellow-level terrorist threat. Lots of questions, lots of emails. Yuri, is it time for us to leave? I already gave advice once, what to do in such cases. We must immediately run away to Vladivostok. Nothing will touch you there. I can't say anything fundamentally new here. The threat, as it was, remains so. Moreover, it will remain so for several weeks. Those forces that are today assembled on the border, the armed forces of Ukraine, they can certainly carry out some kind of local attack. They can fire at one or another settlement, within up to 10 kilometers from mortars, and that's it. They can't create anything else of principle. And what they really count on is to pull back as many Russian troops as possible so that they do not take part in the battle for Donbass. Therefore, every resident, draw your own conclusions. If you are in the front line, perhaps if I were you, I would leave if there is such an opportunity. If you are at a distance of 30, 40, 50 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, there is no real danger to you. And all this informational internet noise is designed only for you to raise a wave of panic, and it is worth noting that you are very good at it. The next is the main direction, the Donbass direction. There we also add a direction in the area of the city of Izium. What's going on here? Here we refer to the reports of the General Staff AFU. They already note that the Ukrainian armed forces in this direction are not taking any active steps. On the contrary, the enemy, in this case the armed forces of the Russian Federation, break through the positions of the Ukrainian troops, with the help of heavy artillery and aircraft, which the Ukrainian armed forces cannot oppose. But I emphasize that this is not yet the main offensive operation. It's just the grinding of Ukrainian troops in the Izium direction. By the way, a very interesting point. Today, according to information leaks from the office of the President of Ukraine, there was a message that the British intelligence officers, and they cooperate very closely with the Ukrainian special services, note that, indeed, the Russian army has a new tactic. No one today goes on serious breakthrough marches, during which Russian troops suffered relatively heavy losses. Now Russian tactics have changed dramatically. Now, in fact, there is a grinding of the Ukrainian armed forces. Russian troops use heavy artillery and aircraft. The main fighting today is essentially taking place in the steppe, that is, in open areas. They are simply grinding the Ukrainian armed forces. And so far Kiev has nothing to oppose to this tactic. Today Kiev accepted old tactic, which at one time in 1813 was accepted by Napoleon Bonaparte when he fought for Germany. He had a large, still quite huge army at that time. He split it into garrisons, which were then, one by one, destroyed. And now, judging by what I see, exactly the same strategy has been chosen by the Ukrainian armed forces today. They rely on cities. Basically, they can be understood, because they can't go out into the field. There they are simply destroyed. And now, relying on the cities, closing in garrisons, they will be gradually destroyed one by one. Given the fact that the mobility of the Ukrainian armed forces is falling day by day, they will very soon not be able to even deliver serious counterattacks. Here, their only advantage, at the moment, is the work on internal communication lines. It is easier for them to transfer reserves, for example, from Kiev to Donbass, from Donbass to the south and so on. From the south she is Kiev. While the Russians around will transfer all this, the Ukrainian troops can do it several times already. and in order to deprive Kiev of this only advantage, in the place of the Russian aviation, I would do this. In the place of the Russian command, I would simply neutralize, first of all the railway lines across the Dnieper River, of which there are only 7 or 8 under the control of Kiev today. And this is in conditions when the Ukrainian armed forces have an acute shortage of fuels and lubricants and motor resources of armored vehicles. And this is also a very important point, because it is becoming more and more difficult to repair this armored vehicle. Given these circumstances, this will almost completely deprive Kiev of this only advantage. By destroying the main strategic railway crossings across the Dnieper River, not Kiev, but Moscow will have the advantage of working on internal communication lines. First of all, this applies to the southern direction, because the transfer of a group, for example, from the Guliapol region to the region somewhere in Kherson, will take the Russians only a few days. And without railway crossings across the Dnieper, Kiev will be able to transfer something there from the Donbass front, where the main Ukrainian shock forces are currently concentrated. At best in a few weeks. Personally, I really wouldn't be surprised if Moscow strikes this blow. At least he would be very logical. And finally, one more interesting remark about the Kherson region. Please note that when over the past 3 days the Russian special services have cleared quite a few sleeping cells of the territorial defense, they have been cleared for the last 3 days. This, according to my data, is more than 100 people. Then after that, in the city of Kherson, they began to massively raise Russian flags. And in the city of Novaya Kakhovka, a pro-Russian rally was held today for the first time. This is a very important point, which I would also draw attention to. This is approximately what I can say about the events on the fronts of the Ukrainian war, as of 20 o'clock on April 10th in the evening. Goodbye on this topic for now.
На этом по этой теме пока все и до свидания.